I know what you're thinking. What in the gosh darn is Bits and Bombs? Bits and Bombs is a podcast deep diving into what it takes to do stand-up from a different comedian every episode. Follow new open micer Peter Doms in his journey to be an okay comic.
I was really excited to hear that someone was getting married without meeting their bride. I was like, oh, there must be another Indian in tonight. Oh, no. That's the opposite. You're like the whitest guy I've ever seen. Look at the jaw on that guy. We don't get jaws like that. That's a cartoon character. What happened? Nah.
He's South African.
Oh, South African. Okay, they're usually my enemies. Must be weird for you not seeing me in a cage, man. Right? That's why he's a bit weirded out, man. It's fine. It's fine. Correctional officer, though. Here's something that you might notice. Like, we're all quite different. Like, you know, in America, murderers and other criminals, like, they get sent love letters while they're in prison. That wouldn't happen in Australia, because there's too many ways to go to jail. So no one here is writing a love letter going, oh, Kevin. Oh. Yeah, I got really hot reading about how you extended your patio without council approval.
Aswhin Segkar.
Hey, Pete.
Hey.
Pete or Peter?
It's up to you.
Okay, I'm going Pete.
Pete? Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. A bit more casual.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you can try Ash if you want. No, don't do it. For some reason, I've always gone with Ashwin. I think it's like it just sounds more Indian. I think if I go Ash, it could be like I'm trying to be Ashley or like trying to fit in with the white culture a bit more. So,
Yeah, okay. So you prefer Aswhin?
yeah, for some reason it's become that way, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So when did you start comedy?
I started in 2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet.
Stand-up in 2014, but I was an internet comedian before then.
Oh, really?
Well, I was trying to be. I had an Indian boy band, a cartoon Indian boy band called Boy Mongoose, and we made cartoon versions of Indian Christmas carols. That was my first attempt at being fun, just parody videos. And so I did that throughout my 20s. And then, because I was too scared to do stand-up, and then in 2014, I thought, okay, let's just try that. In fact, the reason I got into stand-up is because I wanted to, from the Indian boy band cartoon thing, I wanted to be a TV comic writer, writing for shows. And I found out all the jobs going to stand-up comedians. So I thought I'll just do it just as a means to an end.
Yeah, okay. So the passion was more in the TV writing than the stand-up?
Yeah, I think so. I wanted to create characters and tell stories. But then I realised that it's just so hard to get a TV show up. We got knocked back from so many places. I'd travel to play. I went to Malaysia because I lived there as a child to meet the Malaysian funding body called MDEC. So you bring a project, you animate it in Malaysia, they'll put some money in. So it was an island. I met a production company in Ireland at one stage. So we're traveling around and you're just talking to people, you get promises, you make promises. It's just such it's a precarious world, TV. Nothing ever really gets done unless you're very lucky.
Yeah, okay. So then is that what made the decision to make your own online like content, or were you using that as a way to like blend into TV?
I wanted to turn what we'd created, which had gone viral at the time, into some kind of TV show and shorts. So I thought, okay, let's see if someone can pick it up and put a bit of money into it. So we're trying to turn it into something bigger. And that was the hard bit, and which is what I like about stand-up. There's no executives, there's no suits, there's no commissioning editors to be rude to you or to knock you back. It's just up to you to just write content and get it out there. Whether it becomes successful or not, you can still at least have an audience for it.
Yeah, and I guess like especially like since 2014, the way it's become so much more like kind of the users online get to like if it's online, it's kind of more of a free market in terms of like the audience will be like, this is what we want, rather than it being up to like an agency necessarily and things like that.
Yes, it's much more of a meritocracy. But then it's hard to, like, after that Indian boy band cartoon success, if you could call it that, I've never had anything similar. So everything I put up online as an idea will get 30 views over 6 years, 50 views. I've never been able to find something that really connects with people. So back to normal, just back to gigs now.
What was your role in like this animated series?
I was writing it and voicing it. My friend Sean was doing the animations. I met him at a video game company, so he's a video game animator.
Oh, wow.
And he was doing the animations for it. I had a couple of muso friends. They were doing the music for it, and yeah,
Oh, that's so cool.
it was fun.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I haven't heard of. I haven't had you mention that before.
I hadn't mentioned it before. I mean, it's embarrassing now, but that was like my first attempt at comedy and making jokes, which was just parodying Indian stereotypes and things that we'd heard growing up. So that's where I'd started. But now, just it's good memories now. It gave me a chance to travel and meet production companies and try and have an adventure, but just it fizzled out in the end.
Yeah. Okay. So with like your first gig, how did that go? Do you remember that one?
First gig was Raw Comedy.
Yeah.
2014. Yeah, I do remember it. I planned it for a year. I went to watch comedy at Newmarket, and Corey White was on, and I was watching these people on stage, thinking that's a really scary thing to do. I don't think I could do that. So I went to a park and I just started writing jokes, and then I thought I'd do a comedy course. And there's a guy, Robert Grayson, who's passed away now, but he was running a comedy course, and I applied for it. But at that stage, I think he was getting sick of comedy courses at the stage. Like, I went to his house to meet him, and he said, look, I don't do the course anymore. And it seemed he was more into music and teaching drums and bands. So I wanted to, so I didn't even get to do the course. Basically, I had to wing it off my year of sitting in a park writing.
Yeah. And I feel like there's something like, there's something special in just like, just writing and then getting up and doing it.
Yeah.
So you wanted to do a course, but didn't end up doing any courses.
Didn't end up doing the course. Did you end up doing a course before you got on stage?
Not before I got on stage. I had some jokes. I'd always wanted to. So basically, I started in Mackay where there was no open mics, and my friend Reed was doing like open mics at like a pub open mic. So it was like bands and stuff. And he was just getting up and telling jokes. And that's when him and I become friends, because I was like, I've always wanted to do this. But I was too scared to do it there. I was like, that's not where I want to do it. I want to do it at like a place where people are coming for comedy.
Yeah.
So eventually he started an open mic night in Mackay, and that's when I first tried it. And I had, like, for maybe like a year, I had some jokes. It was basically to start out stories that I'd tell friends at parties and stuff, and then kind of wrote it into a joke format. And that was like my first material. It's interesting, and where you start can shape the kind of comedy you make. Like Mackay, the scene might be quite different to Brisbane as well. And so it's interesting. I started but Raw was such a friendly environment to start with, so I think it was a false reading. It's not really your first gig; it's your first pseudo gig. Yeah, it is. It's great, but it's also like it is at fault. Like I feel like. When I started, it was like a very encouraging crowd, and like I did really well. But then I moved to Brisbane and started like doing the open mics here, and just started eating shit. And that's where I like really started to like form what I was doing. Mackay I only did 5 gigs anyway, but I just don't know if I had bombed on my first gig if I would have stuck to it. Like I just don't know. Like if I would have been like. Because I might have been like, oh, I don't have anything and that's fine. I just won't do this again. Like,
you're lucky if you can have your first bomb 3 months in. I think mine was maybe a few months in as well. I went to a gig that my friend had organised, and there was just one table of bikies, it looked like. Yeah. Real rough, bikey kind of dudes, and arms crossed, just not enjoying anything I was saying. And so that was my first experience of sucking. But I got to wait 2 or 3 months in, so that was lucky.
Yeah, okay. I think for me, at the time, they seemed like bombs, whatever. But now I'm like, oh, that's whatever. Like, I still got laughs and it was still okay. It was just like some awkward kind of like, I think my second gig was a lot smaller. Yeah. So I got super nervous because I could see my friends and stuff. Yeah. Where the first gig, like, open mic in Mackay, the first open mic in Mackay had 60 people. Yeah. Which, like, I thought would be the standard in Brisbane, and then I was like, oh no.
No. So it's 4 people, a lot of gigs, and the bombing in front of friends is hard because they don't give you another chance, right? They don't want to go through that embarrassment for you again.
Yeah, and especially hearing like, oh, Peter's funny at work. Like being someone like was like, oh, so-and-so said this. I'm like, fuck. Yeah. But
it's hard. And for me, there's a face that your friends make. It's like almost like a
or like a
Yeah.
like kind of that like just that
some
polite
kind of
smile.
but polite smile, or almost like they're willing you to laugh with their smile, like sort of like they want it to be funny, but it's not funny at that time in that room. So that's my least favorite face that I see in the audience. I'm like, just let this be not funny. Don't half smile me.
Yeah, don't sit on the fence. Just choose.
Just
Do you
choose.
like it or not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think you can really tell, especially like with friends, like if they're like, "Oh yeah, that was good," I'm like, "Yeah, you like that kind of like real like." But if you know you did, if you can tell when someone's genuine, like, "Oh my god, that was great," or whatever. Like, I think that was good is like so brutal.
Yeah, that was good, or that was interesting, or you're really brave.
Interesting.
You're
yeah.
really
Oh, brave. Oh god. Oh, you chose to go up on stage and say that? Oh, not for me, but good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've done it in front of co-workers as well. Some co-workers came along to a gig and it just wasn't going well. And they've never been back since. But, they got their, that was just a tough night. And there was an audience member who was turning sideways to the stage, which is not a good sign. So it was a tough front row. But it sticks with you.
Yeah. Actually, back to like the friend thing. Like, how did you go on your first Raw heat?
That went well. So the Raw was good because I practiced for a year.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really mean anything because I've never tested any of these jokes. But
practicing, were you practicing like in your room though?
In a park to a
in a park. Yeah.
Basically.
I feel like there's something in practicing jokes though, like because that's all I had in Mackay was like a month or two between gigs. So I was just like hammering sets like in my room, like practicing it. And I feel like through practicing, I was like being like, okay, this is a bit wordy. Like this, like I was kind of forming the way the joke would flow just by saying it over and over again.
I think so. I don't have that mentality of I'll write on stage, which some people say.
I don't either. I need to like have a proper plan. Like I have all these written jokes that I haven't rehearsed, and I'm like, I know the base idea and punch and beats of them, but I'm like, because I don't have it like planned, like rehearsed, I'm not going to do it.
No, so I'm the same as you. And practicing, I don't practice in my house though because I like to get out of the house.
Yeah, okay.
And I usually practice like in the Botanic Gardens in Brisbane. And I don't know if you suffer this. Maybe this is more of a Brown thing, but there's a couple times where I've had police ask me what I'm doing because I'm sitting there talking to myself while walking. There's my backpack. I've got a black backpack on the grounds. And once someone had called the cops on me, and the policeman came from two directions, almost like they want to pincer maneuver me. And they said, we just had a incident saying that there was a backpack lying around by itself. I'd never walked more than 4 meters away from it. So probably I was the incident. There's a brown guy talking to himself next to a backpack. And so that was one. And then another one, the cops had just pulled over, wound down the window and said, what are you doing there? And I was like, I'm just rehearsing, just practicing a speech, which isn't what people do. Practicing a speech just sounds like a made-up excuse. So I was like, I'm just doing stand-up. And then he said, tell me a joke. I had to tell a cop a joke to pass. And I was like, what joke do I have? And there was this one-liner that I used to do back then. It was something along the lines of, you know what's worse than walking in on your parents doing it? Walking in on one parent doing it. And then the cop in the back of the car kind of laughed. She laughed. And he just was like, yeah, right. And then he just like
checks out.
Approves.
That's a joke. You just start trying to do crowd work on him. He's like, hold on, that's not stand-up.
Exactly, I could do that. Yeah. And then he drove around, maybe half an hour later. He's like, just gave me a wave. So I'd pass the test.
Yeah, okay. Imagine if you only had like anti-cop material. You're like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
the fireman.
Yeah, just changing it, writing on. That's where you have to write on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right, fireman. Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, talking outside to yourself is a challenge, but it's where I like to be.
Yeah, okay. I haven't tried that. Maybe I should.
It's relaxing. You like this is the thing I do. I take my shoes off, put my feet on the grass. Step and bird shit once a week at least, and just write. But it's my shot of nature. It's my green shot for the day. And I just find it quite relaxing.
Yeah, cool. I've went out to like parks and stuff to write before, but not so much. Rehearse, I'm like, is such like a closed like
Yeah.
environment kind of thing for me. It's kind of I get really like I think I'm less embarrassed about it now, but like there's something more embarrassing for me having people overhear me rehearsing in my
Yeah.
room than I would rather go on stage
Yes.
than like rehearse to someone.
Yeah, but I think the overhearing thing is where I'm getting it wrong, because if you're speaking really loudly to yourself in a park, it just sounds like you're on speed, whereas I'm muttering under my breath, it sounds like I'm
Yeah.
plotting something.
Yeah.
That's a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you did Raw, did you make it to any like the semi-finals?
Yeah,
or-
I made it to the finals
Nice.
for the first... No, semi-finals my first year, and then a couple of finals after that, of the states. Mm.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a good experience, but it was also good to get it out the way, because I'm terrible at competing. Like, even as a child, I would hate any form of competition. I just don't have that alpha, gotta win kind of
Yeah.
brain. And Raw is all about gotta win. So psychologically, it was nice to get through it.
Do you think doing comps can kind of hinder you writing material too? And like kind of like, because I've found that when I did a few comps, I did Raw this year, and then I did another comp at the end of last year, and I was
Yeah.
like so focused on just having a tight 5 that I was refining every little thing to the set I was doing rather than being like also writing more material.
Yeah, it might constrain you in that way. I think it is generally good to do it just to see what your level is at, but just don't do just Raw.
Yeah.
I think the way it constrains you is that, you know, you can't really do crowd work in Raw, so you're probably not going to flex that muscle as much. You probably can't do overly dark material unless you're really good at pulling it off.
Yeah.
And who gets really good at pulling it off straight away? It takes a while to cultivate that muscle. And so it probably constrains that. So probably just constrains certain kinds of writing that you might otherwise have tried. Yeah, in that way. So just don't hold back on that even if you do Raw.
Yeah, there's quite a few like kind of things like when you first start out that you need to like maybe avoid.
Yeah.
Because, or like if it's like especially like, you know, like sex jokes are also like it's such a easy thing to go on to, and when you're starting out you might not be pulling
Yeah.
it off
Yeah.
as well as you think you are too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, sex joke is the common go-to, I think, and we were talking about this earlier. We all go to our physical appearance, whether brown
Yeah.
skin, red hair, fat, skinny, tall, whatever it is, which, you know, it's kind of good to acknowledge that because the audience is thinking it straight away, but not like dwell there too much. So I just realised I had one of your hairs on me as well.
oh yeah, they're everywhere.
I might keep that for luck, actually.
No
My
worries.
channel.
All yours.
Create a voodoo doll of you later.
Oh, my housemates get so mad because like they'll find like a hair in the fridge and they're like, "What
Yeah.
the fuck?"
Because, I mean, it's really obviously yours as well, so you
Yeah.
can't even bullshit about it.
Yeah, no, that's the other guy with the short dark hair that lives in the house.
Yeah. Can I just make one observation about your house as well?
Oh, I knew you'd make an observation about the house on the podcast. But go ahead.
Yeah, just like, because when I have like an infestation in the house, I'll go and grab the raid, and it'll usually be inside a shoe, under the bed, under a notebook, or some random place. It's really hard to find. You've got 2 cans of Mortine right next to each other in a really obvious place. Do you have a problem with locusts or something like that?
No, we don't actually.
Why is it so
Well-
obviously placed up there?
Look, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't even notice.
Okay.
That's not my situation. I didn't buy the Mortine.
Someone else in your house is really
someone
worried
else
about
is like
roaches.
very worried about. I think we have like cockroaches every now and again. but
Okay.
we don't have like a locust storm
Alright.
or anything.
You're prepared though if it does happen.
Yeah. I love how that's what you chose. Out of anything, you just like fucking Mortine. What's the go?
It's I've never seen someone with 2 Mortines. One at most.
Maybe there was like a 2-for-1 deal, like a 2 for $7.
Right, okay, you've got-
I,
You got a thrifty shopper in the house.
yeah, it's like getting an icebreaker or whatever, like from the server. You're like, I need one, but
Yeah.
it's cheaper to buy 2.
I just think in these times of inflation and rental crisis, like your guy is happy to splash out on 2 Mortines.
We're gonna have a house meeting about that.
Yeah.
I'll bring it up.
It's not a priority. Yeah.
Yeah. So then from there, like, so what was you did Raw. Did you go back straight into gigs?
Yeah, straight into gigs. Aaron Pratt, who you might know, ran Hotel HQ in Underwood. And so that was my first gig outside of the Raw world.
Yeah.
An actual pub with actual pokies and actual people not listening. That was my first attempt at that.
Oh, that's where you, and how did that's where like you cut your teeth for sure, is like the people are just there and comedy's on.
Yeah, I think so. And that was a stage where my friends were coming to watch a little bit every now and then. They'd turn up, and I got my first heckle.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So I remember my first heckle. I was doing a show about snakes, and someone heckled, "What do you got against brown snakes?" And I was like, that's the first time I froze on stage because I didn't know how to deal with heckling, and it was such a specific scientific anatomical question at the time. So yeah, it was my first time freezing, and that's when I realized I need to get better at being spontaneous and handling heckling. So I signed up for an improv class, which we talked about before.
Yeah.
So that's I thought I've got to get better at being freeform on stage because I'd come from that writing background where everything was scripted and have a set order. I was thinking, well, this art form isn't just about being scripted. You have to be able to go off script and play on stage as well. So, yeah, Brown Snake Man really helped me in that direction.
Yeah. Do you think then... So you say you don't write stuff on stage, but you think then trying to focus on the being present on stage and the crowd work kind of like was... helped you like form jokes or like change jokes on stage? Like
I write the jokes that I'm going to tell, but then I'm open to what happens in the room. If someone yells something or if I notice something, I'm happy to go and dive into that or respond to it. So that's my spontaneity between the jokes. I try to be as free as I can, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But the jokes themselves, I like to write them because I think I can make them tighter if I work that out in advance.
Yeah, because I've noticed you're quite good with like acknowledging like the room, and like so I think I did a gig with you last year where like you made fun of the aircon for being painted brown and things like to look real like punk and like
that's true,
rustic and
it was
stuff.
a rock and roll air conditioner.
So like you're really good at like being present and kind of just acknowledging certain things around.
That's what I find is the nice residual benefit of stand-up, is that it makes you a bit more of a playful, irreverent person. And I probably wasn't before I started anywhere near as much, but once you've done it a while, you get just fun playing in spaces and playing with ideas and looks, and you can take that with you to your office and your day job as well. It's hard to go back to a normal 9 to 5 job which doesn't have that kind of spontaneity in it afterwards.
I've heard this on like another thing you did, like a video or something, and you said something along the lines of like everyone expects like comedians to be like always like riffing, but what you said is like we're just nerds who write.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I am anyway. We're people who write and then read our books out on stage in public. That's what I think comedy is. Plus a little bit of crowd work in between. Unless you're a pure crowd work comedian, which most people aren't. I feel like it's being a writer who just happens to read their work out in public. So it's writerly. But the illusion is that you're just making it up on the spot.
Yeah.
For the audience. There's that comedian quote, "Don't let them see you working." And so I think that's what they're trying to do. But mainly I think we're just writers that read our work out loud. Yeah. What do you think about it? Like,
well, yeah, I agree with that because I feel like I'm funny if I'm like comfortable around the people and stuff too, like just in everyday life. So some people are like, that guy's not fucking funny at all. Like I literally overheard, actually I'm not going to go into that, but like I've heard people say before being like, oh, he says he's a comedian.
Yeah.
And like, but he's not funny. Like, well, don't have any rapport with you, so I'm not going to be like, I'm the comedian.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's interesting because a lot of like the class clown types of people aren't the ones that do stand up.
Yeah. I feel like you're tapping into a divide between extroverts and introverts, because extroverts are real fun. They're the same with everyone. They're loud and playful and fun with everyone. Whereas introverts might be better writers often because they're more reflective. They look inwards. So that works for stand-up. Whereas the class clown doesn't necessarily work for stand-up.
Yeah.
But they can be funny around everyone because they're just used to being loud and saying this thing you're not supposed to say and breaking the ice a little bit more.
But I guess, it's one of those things where it's not like a definite thing. Like there's heaps of extroverts that like are killing it at comedy and stuff too.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. But when people say you're not funny, like that resonates as well, because I get told the same thing as well. my last housemate that I lived in when I was living in Paddington around here. She was like, "Oh, you're a comedian. I didn't expect that." And it was the same issue you talked about because I didn't have rapport with her.
Yeah.
So we had really polite, meaningless conversation, if at all. Whereas introverts will open up to someone that they actually know a bit better.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing I don't think really gets talked about when it comes to like stand up and stuff. And I think it is that, and that's my approach too, is like having everything fleshed out in writing and like, I guess it is like you are a writer that's just being like, hey, here's my class presentation. But
yeah, it's pretty geeky like that.
Yeah. So, then from there, you just like hitting gigs regularly?
Yeah, then it was just a matter of gigging as much as I could, or 2 or 3 times a week, and working towards something. I think that made it easier because you're spending a lot of time in pubs and clubs. Back to that introvert thing. It's not the best environment for an introvert to be in a pub at night around pokies. A lot of us would rather just be at home by ourselves, watching a movie, watching Netflix, just reading a book or something. So I wasn't a huge fan of that pub environment, which is why often I don't do more than a couple of gigs a week.
Yeah.
And I might not stay the whole night because I just want to go home and just, relax, cook some dinner, watch a movie. So I tried to balance out normal life with gigging, but that was the point, just to work towards something, to work towards writing my first hour and doing a show. I think that was the first goal that I put in place.
Yeah. So that was actually my next question. Like, what was your first goal? But yeah, so when did you hit that first hour goal? Or is that something that's still in progress?
No, I did my first hour maybe 4 years in, 3 to 4 years in, but it wasn't a full hour of comedy. I made this show up that was a mix of comedy and writing. It was comedy and drumming because my teenage passion was to drum. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a drummer and that's another thing. People are like, you don't play drums. The same with you don't play comedy because, don't look like a drummer, maybe. But that's what I was really passionate about, playing with time signatures and rudiments and things. So I mixed comedy and drumming into a show.
Oh, how do you do that?
Well, the idea was to show rhythms from around the world. So African rhythms, Indian rhythms, South American rhythms, and take people through those different rhythmical traditions, but then work in humor and jokes as well throughout. So it was like a drum-based show.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something you did like a full run of, or do you just do it the once off?
No, I did it in Brisbane at Metro Arts back in the city. So I just did a few shows of it, invited some friends around. Yeah, and it was more like a concept show rather than straight stand up. And I think I prefer those concept shows. And then maybe when I do another show, it'll be some idea like that, just a theme rather than an hour of comedy. Partly because it's hard to write an hour of comedy, but also I just like the variety of diving into some idea rather than just telling jokes.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think is going to be your first show?
I don't know. Like, so I'm doing... Yeah, I don't know. I think I wanted... If I was to do a show, I think, like, the through line or, like, the main thing, it would be just about my life. I'm, like, starting to go more, like, an anecdotal kind of, like, way with my comedy. And, like, there's a lot of stuff in my life from, like, that's wild that happened. I should, like, talk about it and, like, make jokes about it and stuff. But, yeah, I don't know. Doing an hour show is so daunting, obviously. Like, especially, like, getting like 5-minute spots at a time and like, doing 2 or 3 gigs a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's with the goal stuff. It's like, at what point should I be setting certain goals so just don't get caught in a rut of like doing gigs every week but not really working towards something.
Yeah.
But this year I'm working towards doing a split, so 15 minutes. So at the moment, the most I've done on stage is like 10 minutes.
Yeah. And maybe a way around that, testing enough material to fill an hour. I heard the step that Ronnie Cheng would invite friends around to his house and he'd just test out his first hour or 50 minutes and it would suck, and then he would test it again and again and again. So you could just invite mates over and test your material out in like your own home comedy setting.
Yeah, okay. We've actually done that before.
Oh,
we had not the same. We had a party here last year where we like right here we had like because we also had like friends like playing music and all that stuff, and like we set up mics and had people doing stand up here.
Yeah, did it work?
It worked pretty well. Yeah. The only the issue was like none of the comedians in the scene ended up wanting to do it or showing up or whatever. But like, it was just a few mates that have tried stand up before. They were doing it too,
Yeah.
and I gave it a go. Like, it seemed to go all right for like a. Doing stand up at a party sounds like a horrible idea, but I was like, I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah. I don't like it. Sometimes I get asked to do stand up at Indian function gigs, like, but I don't make Indians laugh very well. I realize that because I left the country when I was 1, and my humor is too different from people who've been raised in India all their life. So, because sometimes I have to MC Diwali and Holi and these kind of Indian functions, and I just, they don't laugh at my bits. So let's just introduce the next Punjabi dance troupe. Just get straight to it. It's hard, I find.
Yeah. Okay. So an hour show, and then like what after doing an hour show is the goal? Like more hour shows, I guess.
But then it becomes a hamster wheel, and
that's what I've. Yeah.
And I'm worried about the stand-up hamster wheel. That's what's on my mind at the moment, is it not being a hamster wheel. Because I like the art form. I like writing new jokes, testing them out. But just the idea of writing a new hour per year, touring it, maybe playing to 6 people, hoping to get signed, hoping to climb that ladder, hoping to get maybe a spot on a TV quiz show. It can be a hamster wheel, and that takes the fun out of it. So I want to keep this thing fun, even if that means not having as much success. I want to have a balanced life where this is part of it. Got the interviewing, the radio stuff as part of it. I've got a small business as well, so I've maybe just got a few different balls that I'll juggle. But just keep them in balance. And like I said, plenty of time to take my shoes off and walk around the park and get accosted by the cops. Just that kind of balanced life, I think.
Yeah. The hamster wheel thing's interesting because I feel like it's some people, I don't know, like get so focused in putting in the reps. Yeah. Like for me, and it works for some people, but for me doing like more than 5 gigs a week, I'd be like, that's taking over my life.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I don't know. Like I enjoy the 2 or 3 gigs a week as well. Yeah. And that balance.
I think it depends on your personality. Maybe some people are really driven and they're goal oriented and they're like, this is the grind you got to get through to make it. Others are just enjoying the ride, I guess, a bit more, and they want the ride to be comfortable. And 2 gigs, 3 gigs is comfortable and not hustling as much as comfortable. So it just depends on your personality.
So you mentioned, and I did want to go into this. So the radio show. When did you get the do you want to talk about your role with the radio?
Okay, so that was maybe 2-3 years in. I was doing an improv style show. There's this guy Gareth. Gareth had just come back from Japan. He'd been living in Japan for 30 years, and he'd learnt kabuki theatre and all these Japanese theatre art forms, including an improv style of comedy. And he said, "Look, I want to try that kind of improv comedy in Brisbane. I'll invite some comedians along." And we'll do this fusion of stand-up and kabuki theatre. So it's a really interesting idea. And then there was a radio producer from the ABC who was there at the time just covering the event because it was an unusual idea. And she just said, do you want to come along and be a guest on the radio? So I just got lucky in being at the right place at the right time. Producer was there, so come along and be a guest. And so I just started being a guest every now and then on people's shows, on panel shows, talking about the news of the week or whatever it was. And then after 6 months there or so, they said, do you want to train up to do radio? So there's a course that the ABC offers for people within the company where they'll let you do your own show for 6 weeks on the digital networks. That's not as widely broadcast, but it allows you to learn the ropes of doing radio. And so it was almost like doing a stand-up theme show. I did like another theme show. I was like focusing on one country every week. My parents moved around a lot. We lived in about 5 different countries. So I focused on each one of them. Each show was dedicated to that country, the music, the ideas, guests from that place. So there was Malaysia, New Zealand, England, Australia, India. And so I did a themed show for those 6. I made up a 6 country just that I'd never been to. I can't remember what it was. But so that's how I slowly got into it.
Yeah, cool. And then from there, did you do what other shows were you doing?
That was
did that kick off into a full-time contract?
Well, it kicked off into being a fill-in host, which is what I still am. So when people get sick, you can fill in on certain shows. So they usually let me fill in on the weekends, sometimes on evenings, which are more of the lighthearted shows, which I think are more comedian-friendly shows as well, because a lot of the more serious shows go to ex-journalists that have been crime reporters and hit the beat as well a bit more, and they have to grill people about the daily news. So Yeah, have you got interested in that kind of work?
Yeah, I do have an interest in the radio side of things. It's just I don't know like where to begin with.
I think most radio people start in the countryside or in community radio.
Yeah.
And then from there they can be pulled into like a bigger station or podcasting. You just got to show that you can have interesting conversations with people. I think that's the main job. But yeah, radio's changing fast at the moment. There's turmoil in every radio station, I think, because we're leaving an era behind where people used to listen to the radio. Even some car manufacturers are not going to put AM radios in their cars anymore.
Yeah.
So where are you going to be heard? There's a shift from listening to the radio to watching Netflix, listening to Spotify, listening to podcasts. So I think all radio stations are trying to figure out how to make that jump.
Yeah, especially like podcasts are like it's like an hour, like it's like, okay, this is an hour block of content.
Yeah.
And like there will be like advertisements and stuff in it, but they know like this is a certain topic I want. And it's like it gets hyper specific with stuff.
Yeah.
You can listen to podcasts about history or true crime and like your interests. So I guess that's also like contributes to the shift away from radio.
Yeah, I feel like we're into 5-second TikToks or 1 hour political discussions.
Yeah, it's funny how like the retention is either like just super quick content or like super like long form, like 3 hour Joe Rogan podcast or something.
And that seems to be who we're becoming. So you got to be able to handle that world, I think, which is what, you're creating content now, but I think that's what the future is, short form or super long form. So yeah, because I listen to a lot of podcasts as I'm walking around and what do you like to listen to? Is there any podcast that really gets you?
I've noticed that like a lot of the stuff it's very conversational, so it can be about a certain topic, but it's mostly just like a lot of the comedy, like the American comedy ones where they're just kind of riffing and like, especially because that's my interest at the moment is doing stand-up comedy, so like to hear them talking about the scene or like just riffing and stuff. Yeah. Because I do it like while I work, just like Excel spreadsheets and all that fun stuff. Where I find it really hard to like I'll try to listen to audiobooks and I'm like, I just can't pay enough attention to like, probably comes into the fact I have ADD, but like I struggle with like paying attention to certain like hyper specific things. But if it's more like a conversation, I can feel more engaged. And if I like zone out for a bit, I don't feel like I'm missing any vital information either.
Yeah, unlike a story where you can get lost.
Yeah,
if you miss the
especially
story.
like the story stuff. Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. It's like listening to classical music rather than a podcast. I'm the same. If I listen to music without words in it, it can just sit in the background. Some things blend into the background more easily, I guess. Yeah.
What about yourself? Like, what type of content are you into?
Because I interview people now on the radio, I like to have content that explains a bit more about how the world works, how people work. So if it's something to do with psychology, sociology, economics, it's kind of like big picture explanations for how things work. So the last podcast I was listening to was this one called How Stuff Works, which is quite well known.
Yeah, I think I have that one on my list. I haven't actually, like, that was one I was like, oh, that looks interesting. I got an ad. I was like, that's interesting, but I haven't actually listened to it yet. But yeah.
And they'll just talk about everything like how manhunts work, or why the Bronze Age collapse happened. That was the last one. Why civilization suddenly stopped 1,200 years ago because we built our cities too large. We went too big too soon. It's almost like, doing your first hour after you've 6 months of comedy. We built giant cities when we weren't ready to support them.
Yeah.
They were too complex, and so we all collapsed at once. And so I don't know if that'll ever turn up in an interview, but it's nice to know that. So if someone's talking about, the collapse that we're encountering now in the modern day, we can relate that back to 3,000 years ago during the Bronze Age collapse. What are the similarities? So I guess I like to see parallels. So those big picture topics are interesting to me.
Yeah. Actually, with the back to the goals thing, real quick. How soon do you think is too soon to do like an hour show?
Oh, it's different for different people.
Yeah.
I've heard the comics that were coming up in the 90s, they were headlining within a year and a half. They must be doing 30-minute spots.
Yeah.
So some people will get there quicker. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. Just, are you entertaining the audience? Are you boring the audience? Just judge it for yourself, whether you should be on stage for half an hour or 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you also have a show where you interview comedians.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so it's a show called Help Me, I'm a Comedian, where we ask a comedian to explain one of the most difficult things that they went through and they just talk about the incident. And a psychologist is there, Rachel, who tries to give some advice and some insight into the topic. And so it's almost like a story for us, but also the audience gets to hear if they're going through that situation, they might get some useful advice about it.
Yeah, it's funny because I was listening to like the Mel Buttle one, and she was talking about like anxiety, and there were certain things that I could relate to. I was like, hold on a second. It made me kind of
What was an example of something she said that you could connect with?
I think it was like the example was like how she would. I think it was like worried about getting like inconveniencing people. Like I think either asking for like a certain like change or something, or there was like a certain example where, she didn't want to like, I can't remember the like super vague because I can't remember the actual thing, but where it related for me, for example, was there was one time where I had like actually I think it might have been about bus drivers or something, how they get cranky when you give them change or something.
Yes.
When you give them like a note. And there was a direct example where I had like a $50 note.
Yeah.
And it was like in Mackay, it was like $1 an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had like meat and like stuff that I needed to take home, but I literally chose not to take the bus because I couldn't deal with the confrontation.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's what I was like, this anxiety thing might be a little bit worse than I expected.
Yeah.
So yeah, to hear that and like hear like a therapy session they're being kind of like discussed in like a therapy kind of way, I was like, oh fuck, maybe I should like unpack this with someone.
We've all got something, and I think I have a similar one. I don't like confrontation either, and so I've been watching YouTube videos about how to be more assertive as well, and just trying to get tips of it, because some people are just naturally disagreeable and they will just say whatever they want regardless of the effects. I don't have that gene.
Yeah, I'm the same, and that's like
I think they can make good comics as well, naturally disagreeable people, because they just say the thing you're not supposed to say. So the rest of us have to train at it. So assertiveness, one thing I was learning is you got to recognize your own needs, because one of the reasons we don't speak up is because we don't recognize that we have things we want and need as well. We just focus on other people's, like, oh, that bus driver, he needs to not deal with a $50 note. And so we focus on everyone else, what everyone else needs, not what we need, just like the need to get home without carrying a heavy bag. So yeah, it's something I've got to work on as well. So maybe that can be our homework. Do one assertive thing.
Check in with me later.
Yeah. Like if I was to do one assertive thing, it would be to throw one of those Morteens into the bin, because you really don't need two of them.
You can take one home if you want.
Well, yeah. I need one.
All right. I'll get $50 out from an ATM and go straight to a bus. Even though in Brisbane it's all like go-karts.
Oh yeah, damn it. I just saw you've got a can of Raid. Sorry. Now I'm just going to take one break.
All right. Just to show you. Aswhin is currently raiding my house for.
This is excessive. Sorry, it's almost like a commercial.
Yeah.
For one house, I haven't seen a single roach. It just feels a bit much. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's why there is no roaches, because we get on top of it very.
You are covered. Actually, which one?
Just quick point. Like, there's like a. It's like having like a fire extinguisher at certain exits, certain places. It's just like for quick access.
Yeah, it's like everyone's got a safe space, safe keyword. You've got a safe raid at every corner. Like you're never going to be in trouble. Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to like pick on me for?
Okay, there's one other thing.
Oh wait. Oh no, you had one already.
Okay, I can see that there's Peter Dahm's up there, certificate of completion.
Oh no.
But I can't see what you've completed. Like, why have they made that so small? What was it that you completed?
Okay, so that's actually that's a Big Fork certificate.
Oh, okay.
So that's I don't know. Ask you know the Big Fork guys. Ask them yourself.
I do.
It's a level 1 of improv.
Okay.
So that's our achievement wall up there. So
it's all you doing all the achievements, isn't it?
No, I'm the only one up there. I don't know. I don't have a Bachelor of Science.
Oh, I thought you were that guy up there as well.
Nah, that's not me. That's someone that hasn't lived here for like 2 years.
Okay.
I don't know. I thought it'd be funny to put my improv thing up. I don't actually have my actual bachelor degree up there.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be funny to, improv is my
I
main
think it
achievement.
is. But it's also like coming back to that bus driver. Like you've achieved all these amazing things, but you don't want people to really see them. So you've hid them right up in the corner to avoid making anyone else uncomfortable.
Yeah, maybe.
You should celebrate them.
Well, that's how it's. No, it's just that the ceiling's so high.
Oh, that's true.
That's more like that. That is there to celebrate, but that's like where else are we going to put it?
It's
like,
Queensland architecture's fault.
yeah, they made us insecure.
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, you have the radio show.
Yeah.
That can be found like. Because I was looking for it on Spotify, but it's on
no.
it's only on ABC.
It's on the ABC website itself. Yeah, just Google "Help Me, I'm a Comedian."
Yeah, it's really good. Don't do what I did and binge like 8 episodes
No.
in like the span of a few hours.
No,
but
it's a bit intense because people talk about the darkest things in their life: anxiety, someone taking their own life, a friend may have taken their own life, bullying. There's some intense stuff in there, but it's not. Maybe 8 episodes is too much, but 1 is manageable. 1 or 2 at a time.
1 or 2 is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it was just really interesting to see because we have a lot of and we had this discussion kind of off camera, but where a lot of like podcasts and stuff are very like riffy and focused on like people trying to be funny. So to have like a show that is purely like, okay, here's the vulnerable side of these comedians.
Yeah.
And less like, but in a way that's not making it like drama kind of thing
Yeah.
either. Like there's a genuine like intention behind it. Like
Yes.
what made you want to do the show?
I've always, back to that psychology question, I was interested in what makes people tick, what makes the world the way it is. So I thought if you talk about the hardest moment in your life, that's probably quite a significant thing to talk about. And originally we were thinking it would be a bit like what you were saying. People might make it funny and serious at the same time. But it's hard. If you try to be funny, you're probably operating at this superficial level where you're trying to make people laugh and have a good time. And that's a different part of your brain to the one that's digging deeper. And there's a comedian, Nish, still around, Nish, I think he's a stock trader now, but he was a comedian about 10 years ago when I started. And he made this really interesting point that oftentimes, you can be funny or interesting, and it's hard to be both. So we prefer interesting to funny, and interesting means saying real things, significant things, without feeling like you need to make us laugh at the same time, because that can happen later. There are moments of humor, but they're not riffy moments of humor.
Yeah.
They're just like genuine reactions to what just happened, moments of humor.
Yeah. And I think I don't know, like there's like that weird thing of like, especially like if you're not writing it out, like writing a bit about your traumas or whatever, and you're just like trying to be like, you talk like if I was discussing certain things about myself and like just defaulting to trying to be funny and then you laugh at it, I might be like, oh fuck, why did I joke about that? Like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, you've got to be careful. I think, it's almost like a wall, which is fine. It's a great wall. Like, comedy is a fantastic wall because, you put it up as a defense mechanism. You make people laugh. Your estimation in other people's eyes goes up because you're the funny one. So there's all these good things about comedy, but it's not a great tool to dive into, the most significant parts of your life, I think. That requires a different type of conversation. There's room for both, but we just found it really hard to mix because sometimes if a comedian came in and they tried to do a bit, we'd be enjoying the bit, but they wouldn't be telling the whole story, the whole truth.
Yep.
So yeah, but it ended up being a bit more serious than funny, but hopefully still interesting.
Yeah, interesting for sure. What's the future? Is there, because you only you do it like a certain time every year, don't you?
Every Christmas when they need content over summer, when all the main hosts go on holiday and are away, so they play this show over summertime. And then my other thing is just filling in when they need me.
Yep. Do you think you'd ever like take that type of do you think you see yourself doing any shows like that, like in your own kind of on your own your own back?
I think so. It's just hard to build a show, isn't it? To build a YouTube audience, or it takes a long time of grinding and regularly putting out content. And I was saying this before, like I just find it hard to attract an audience, whatever I do, to really build an audience. I don't know if I'm missing the mark or anything, but I'll get super excited about weird ideas. Like me and my friend Lee came up with this idea of world news with cats, where we dressed up as cats and just discussed the world news. And I was like,
Just never acknowledge that you're in.
yeah, never acknowledge that we're in cat suits, and then we cut away animations and things.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe there was one lady in San Francisco who really loved it. She would just rave about it to us. No one else really got into it. So all my ideas just seem to peter out after 6 months to 12 months. So maybe I just got to find that thing that connects.
Yeah. So at least, like, so it's something you've like stuck at for like a consistent amount of time. You're just like, okay, that's not gaining anything.
Yeah, as far as new ideas go. But I like the idea of interviewing people and talking to people. That's one of my favorite things. So if I could do that a bit more, I think that'd be fun. So we'll see how, whether it's through the ABC or whether it's outside as well, just got to work it out. But just conversations, yeah, I enjoy that. And I want to sort of share some of what I've learned anyway with others as well. So with new interns, podcasters, just how I think interesting conversations can happen, and maybe share some tips as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely need that for sure. I'd be interested in that. But yeah. So what's next for you? Like, do you have anything that you're planning to do this year, or?
I've gone back to that conversation of the hamster wheel. I'm not even fully sure. I'm writing new jokes, so I'm like getting more content that I could put into a show, but then I don't know exactly where it's heading. Like, I feel like my life is just juggling all these different things, like a bit of comedy, bit of the radio. I'm learning Hindi, which is an Indian language I never got to learn growing up, running this business. So I'm hoping they'll fuse together into some kind of Voltron character in 10 years, and that'll be the life. So comedy will be one part of it, but I don't know. I'll just keep going at the joke writing until then.
Yeah. Yeah. With joke writing, do you think there's like what's your, like, how consistent are you with joke writing? Like, do you have like because I think I'm at a point where I need to, if I don't, I need to be like knuckle down and be like, okay, I need to make some type of schedule or just commitment to writing. Because I feel like I blink and it's like 6 months and I haven't like really written anything.
Yeah. I try to write every day or every couple of days, and I just need to be relaxed. So often it's 3:00 in the afternoon. The tasks of the day are done with. Yep. The sun's usually pretty good at that time, and I'll go to the park, or nearly always outside, and I'm just going to be relaxed. So often I'll have like a piece of chocolate or just something a little happy, be in a happy place, and then just start writing. And it's interesting how jokes are written. When I started, I'd buy like a book on how to write jokes, and it's a bit more formulaic. Like, I'll create a list of things here, create a list of things there, try to see a connection between these two things, and like an unexpected link between these two things, and that's a joke. And that's not how I write anymore. More, I'll just come up with a concept and then just stare at the page or stare into space until what I think is funny about that comes out, and then that's the joke, rather than creating a list and trying to draw links, which I think for me anyway led to more formulaic comedy. Whereas when you just like stare into space, I feel like you're tapping into your subconscious, and what comes out might be a bit more natural rather than here's a pun based on these two link words.
Yeah, okay. And you're also probably forming stuff where like do you think that's like doing that has like kicked off something in your brain where then, you know, you finish your writing or whatever, but then you'll be doing other tasks and be like, actually, like you're still connecting those dots and like, and like writing it, but just in your head?
Well, once I've written it once, I might forget about it, but then when I come back to it, or, you know, you're right, maybe in the middle of the night, a tag will come. Yeah. When your alpha waves are at the highest or something, you're most relaxed, then creativity kicks in. So yeah, that's the way I seem to do it, but I guess everyone's got their own method. A lot of people write from things that have happened to them and funny observations, whereas I don't have people in my life, so it makes it hard to write about them. Like no partner, no kids. That reminds me of living in the valley, that noise. It's a very comforting police siren vibe. See, no people in my life, so I don't have that thing to bounce off. So yeah, just try to stare into empty space instead. What about you? What's your method?
I think it's like sometimes it'll from a conversation I'd say something, or like similar life experiences, but it's one of those things I kind of just sticks in my brain, and like so I'll be doing something and just like constantly thinking. So I've kind of like added all these tags or like formed an idea before I've even written it down.
Yeah.
So I think when I have an initial idea, I put it into my notes app.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, this is like the idea or a premise. But I can't be like, sit down and be like, kind of as I'm like writing or whatever, form the joke. It's kind of, I need to come in with like, I don't know. I think my process is just thinking about it a lot and kind of just stewing on it for a few days and then writing it down. And then once it's written, I can kind of then becomes like a math equation almost where you're kind of like, okay, that's excessive, or what if I added this here?
Yeah.
Like,
so you have one stage where your creative brain has done the work.
Yeah.
And then your second stage where your editor brain is fixing it up.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. And the fact that you base it on interactions and conversations, I think connects it to real life, which means the audience can connect with it. And that's my problem because I'm in such a bubble of isolation. Sometimes I'll write jokes about, maybe the Hittites mixing fabrics and trading with the Athenians and stuff that I might have read in a book or in a podcast. That's not related to people's everyday life. And I find this quite a bit where my jokes are just not connecting with people who have ordinary lives with a family around them, people who love them, a dog, a suburb, just getting a bit too abstract just because I'm in a world of podcasts and trivia. That's the hard part anyway.
Yeah. I guess we can go towards like wrapping it up now, but like where can people find you?
Yes, so just Google my name if you can spell it. But if you do spell it, I'm the only one, I think, on Google, Aswhin Segkar. And there's Facebook, a little bit of YouTube, maybe some world news with cats on Facebook from years ago. That's the easiest way.
Yeah, no worries. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Pete.
Appreciate it.
See ya.